Hey everyone, Bramflakes here, back with another Eternal Return video. Today we'll be talking about more of a squads focused list that I've kind of curated from the games that I've played so far. Obviously, I'm no expert in squads. My main focus before, this entire 1.0 update happened was solos, so this is kind of more first impressions and very tentative list that I'll probably update as time goes on, but right now these are really just kind of like knee-jerk, oh this character feels really good, or oh this character is really obnoxious to play against, and hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of what should be considered strong or at least playable. All these characters are characters that I consider fairly simplistic to learn and play, so hopefully there's not really a mechanics threshold or mechanics, like floor that has to be met in order to play these characters properly. Obviously, I'll go over kind of just basic gameplay tips on how you play them, as well as just explain why I think they're strong and what you should focus on when you play them. So the first character I want to talk about is Leon. Leon has been updated to have his W be an AoE shield as opposed to a targeted shield that he could place on himself or an ally. His ultimate has also become much quicker. It's almost an instant cast, whereas before it was very slow and it'd be very hard to really catch anybody if you didn't knock them up immediately. And because of that, Leon's consistency when it comes to everything is now way better, because now he has this AoE shield for team-wide mitigation, and he has this much better version of his ultimate that can more consistently catch enemies and really basically stun lock them for over 2 seconds just because of how his ultimate works. The combination of all that really makes him a pretty nasty character, because this means that you can be a lot less precise with his knockup as long as you're somewhat close to the enemy, and as long as you are kind of aware of what their mobility cooldowns are. You can now kind of freely press your ultimate around them, and whether that ends up requiring you to, flash to get next to them or just waiting and being patient for a while, it really is up to you. He's just very safe, very consistent, and he's very simple. His skills are all very forgiving, and it's very difficult to not get value out of his W and his ultimate just because of how strong they are now. The next character I want to talk about is Cathy, who I think should be in the background of the gameplay video that I'm showing for this. Cathy is a character who used to have a lot more utility before the 1.0 update, but she's now become more of a true assassin than she was in the past. So the main utility that I'm talking about is going to be the ground effect on her outer W, which kind of made her unfair in a lot of regards to the base game, because it'd be very hard to play around her and escape her when she slowed you for like 70% and then grounded you at the same time, which prevented you from properly moving away from her. With that though, they've compensated her with a lot of damage, and that really gives her more of a true assassin gameplay fantasy, because now you have this ability Suture, which really sets up your combo beautifully. Like, you can stun 2 enemies together and then not really raw ult them, but ult them together with Amp Drone, and you do a lot of damage. You can even dash to them afterwards to add even more damage. Her W, while it did lose a lot of utility, it still does a lot of damage, so hitting it will be satisfying. And while there is kind of a skill requirement when it comes to her Suture, it isn't that big of a deal with teammates, because now you can kind of ult based off your teammates or Suture based off your teammates, and it is really satisfying learning how to land her Suture more and more consistently, because you can really tell the value of hitting a high quality, double stun and then ulting them afterwards. So Cathy, her combo is very fluid, she's very flexible, she has a lot of mobility, she has a lot of safety, especially if you play dagger skill, and most importantly, she has a lot of impact in the squad team-based modes if you can hit that Suture, or even just get a pick. Like, it is totally fine hitting Suture on an enemy with no wall, because that route might allow your teammate to get a route or another crowd control, which would then set you up for everything else. So really don't think too hard on Cathy. Like, obviously think a little bit if you have a good Suture angle, but if it comes down to it, just comboing people and landing all your skills will really chunk people down so fast. So moving on from the 2 melees, we'll be going on to a character who is very good at support and also does a lot of damage for some odd reason, and that character is going to be Theodore. He is a character with a gigantic gun. I think he's a sniper character, which would explain it, but his abilities really do deceptively high amounts for what I guess you could what other stats he has. So his Q gives a very good healing over time. I believe his W is a wall. I actually haven't played Theodore at all. These are all observations I've had watching my friend play them and playing against him. But I'm pretty sure his W is a wall that empowers and echoes his Q, as well as empowers his E, which is a targeted root. And so I found myself that in a very nasty way, but Theodore's E, or whatever his root is, functions very similar to Cathy's Suture, where it's an insane team setup ability. I had a game today where I was doing pretty well, and then since I didn't know what Theodore did, I didn't respect his AoE root, and then my entire team got caught by a root that lasts like 1 whole second. And then Theodore himself, I think, did most of the damage to my team. Like there was, I think, an Alex and a Debbie Marlene somewhere in there, but obviously I think the Debbie Marlene pissed me off, but the Theodore hitting that root did like 20% of our HP, and his ultimate did another 40%, and then his Q did like another 20%, which left very little left for the Debbie and Marlene to do. So Theodore, he is pretty squishy. Again, I would hope he's squishy because he is a ranged character with a ton of damage and healing, but he is a character that really just does a lot for players who enjoy playing more of a keep away style and just zoning others out. So if you're looking to play someone who can basically do it all, I think Theodore is a pretty safe pick. Just be aware that if you misposition, there are a lot of characters, kind of like Cathy and Leon, that will kill you instantly if you, again, misposition. The fourth characters, so these are 2 characters that are kind of in the same bucket in my opinion. They're kind of on the same spectrum, but obviously they're on differing ends. So these 2 characters are going to be Adriana and Ava. So Adriana was changed where she now is more damage focused. She used to have a knockback effect on her ultimate, and she used to be rewarded a lot more if people sat on her passive, which is the fire trails that she leaves with her E and oil, as well as her Molotov. But they removed the stacking debuff, and instead she now has this dot that kind of triggers whenever she hits somebody with any skill and reduces their defense, which is a pretty powerful effect, but it means that she's a lot more focused on this kind of general disruption vibe instead of being able to pick one character and really knock them around and focus them down. And she does do a lot of damage. I kind of was under the impression she wasn't that great, but then I played her a lot and I realized that she does do a lot of random damage during a team fight, because again, her dot, the new dot that she has on her passive, will activate on any skill damage. So whether you have a fire lying around, you accidentally tag someone with their flamethrower Q, really you just do anything, you might just do a lot more damage randomly and for free, especially like, let's say that you're trying to focus one person, you throw out your W oil trail, you burn, you light it up, you hit them for a bit, they run away, but then their teammate who's like a melee accidentally steps onto the fire trail for even half a second. Now they'll take way more damage than they would have in the past because of your dot, and if any enemies, or rather any allies, are attacking that melee who decide to hop in, they now have like a 15 to 20% armor shred, which is insanely good free armor shred. Now, that being said, I think armor shred doesn't stack in this game, so if you have somebody with frailty, it doesn't work as well, but if your team doesn't have natural armor penetration, it's insane. Like, that's a lot of free damage, and it's very hidden. Like, you won't see it in your stats. Your allies might do a bit more damage than they think about, but it's a really good effect, and I think I undervalued a lot as I played her. And on the other side, we have Ava, who does have a lot less utility. She doesn't have a damage amp for her team. Her slow is a bit smaller. However, Ava has a lot more damage from a longer range. So they changed Ava to the point where her ultimate doesn't really have a real cooldown. There's like a kind of cast bar that ticks for 1 second whenever you cancel it, but it's immediately up. So basically there's a 1 second cooldown whenever you deactivate it. And all her abilities generate her an insane amount of VF. So basically, in my opinion, the idea with Ava is that you want to be using your ultimate as often as possible. If you miss your ultimate, doesn't matter, just recast it. If you have full mana bar, doesn't matter, just use your ultimate. Like, it's really just a skill that you should be casting at all times whenever you're capped out on mana, just because of how much refund you get from her Q, W, and E. And I think that's probably something that people will have to learn to do with Ava, because in the past you did kind of want to save your ultimate for a really ideal cast because you had like a 7-second lockout and your W amped it. But with the W now lacking that amp and the ultimate being a very free to use ability, I believe that she does do more damage than Adriana in a focused fight, but you really have to understand that you have to focus that damage. Like, you can't just throw it out randomly like you do with Adri. You have to pick somebody and then track them with your ultimate, call them out, and then continue hitting that target. And that makes it really good for anti-dive comps. Ava is, again, like a pretty squishy mage, but with Blink and Smokescreen, you can really buy yourself enough time to ult down, like maybe, like the Cathy example. Let's say you blink out the Cathy suture and then you ult and she Rs you. You're kind of free to ult her, because if she dashes, you can just cancel your ultimate, walk a bit, and then ult her again, and then she has no mobility to really get away. And if your team's focusing that Cathy with you, you're doing a lot of extra damage to that Cathy, a lot more than Adri would in that scenario, because Adri would get her Q juked out and then she can't really turn, she's at the kite. And so again, they do fill very similar roles, where they're both kind of these AoE damage mages, but I think Adri's probably a bit easier to get a lot of value out of than Ava. Ava does require you to kind of relearn her, especially if you played Ava in the past, but I do think she does do more if your team is better at focusing and bursting. So the last character that I want to talk about is actually a personal favorite of mine. It's going to be Dailin. They adjusted Dailin so she's much easier to play. You no longer have that annoying alcohol passive where you have to like drink alcohol to fix your attack speed problems. Now instead you just drink alcohol to get like 1 AP, which is just like a fun gimmick that Emilion have left. She now doesn't have a silence on her E, but they've compensated that with letting her do way more damage, which is fine, but just pretty interesting because Dailin already did a lot of damage. I am also specifically talking about Nunchuck Dailin, because for some reason Glove Dailin seems to lack a lot of damage, but Nunchuck stats are still very good, and her scaling is also very good in that build, and her transition items are insanely good in that build. So if you're playing Dailin, make sure you go Nunchuck, make sure you go a crit build, and make sure that you just do the thing where you drink once and then Q and keep autoing, and you'll see your opponents melt very quickly. Now obviously there is kind of like a thing where you have to learn how to not accidentally silence yourself when you play her, but honestly that comes with experience, and she has so many fewer barriers to, I guess, entry, because you no longer have to buy alcohol all the time, you no longer have to make sure your ultimate's constantly charged. Like, there's just so many things that they took out of her kit to the point where she's a lot more noob friendly in my opinion. But yeah, hopefully that list kind of helps out. I know this is, again, a very low effort video, but I really want to try and make as many videos as possible while the population is still thriving, just so that we can keep as many people in as possible. I would love these videos to be higher quality, but since I have a job and I'm, you know, coming a bit late and I'm no longer streaming and having easier content with that, I do have to think about what I want to talk about, and it is kind of a grind, but it's a fun grind nonetheless. So hopefully you guys don't mind like the lower quality videos where there isn't as many visual cues, where I like show what I'm talking about all the time. And I hope that these commentary videos that kind of just like our train of thoughts with some decent gameplay in the background are good enough. But yeah, I hope to see you guys again, and have a good day or night wherever you are. See you guys next time. Bye bye.